right, so in this lecture we're going to continue looking at the structures of the male reproductive tract and then at some of the external reproductive organs that we see associated with the male body and a little bit about sexual function. So here we go. So the epididymis, and the plural of epididymis is epididymides. It's an unusual pluralization. And I want you to pay close attention to the spelling here. So it's epidid, and then there's that Y in there. And then it ends with an I again. So 3 I's with a Y in between the second and third I. Just be sure you keep that together. So the epididymides are the place where the sperm are stored, and as they're transferred from the seminiferous tubules into the reedy testis and then on into the epididymis, they are functionally immature. So that means that they are incapable of any kind of coordinated locomotion. So their flagellum doesn't work properly yet, and they are not able to fertilize an egg. So there are nutrients being produced by the cells that line the epididymis, and chemicals that help to promote maturation, and the sperm are going to be moved through the epididymis by peristaltic contractions. So every so often there'll be a wave of peristaltic contractions that are going to move the sperm a little bit further through the tube of the epididymis. It's very highly coiled, approximately 20 foot long, and found there just on the posterior surface of the testis. So by the time that the sperm leave the epididymides, they are mature, but they're not yet motile. They're not yet capable of swimming. And the epididymis is definitely palpable if you feel, if you're doing an exam, say a self-exam if you're a guy, or if you're involved somehow with an exam of a male. It is definitely palpable there on the posterior surface of the testis. All right, so from the epididymis then, as sperm are leaving the body during ejaculation, they will move into the ductus deferens, and if we were to look at that then in the plural form, it's the ductus deferentia, and they're sometimes referred to as the vas deferens or the vasa deferentia. It's a much larger tube, approximately 18 inches long, larger in diameter, I should say. Lots of muscular component to the wall of the ductus deferens. And so during ejaculation, peristaltic contractions move the sperm from the epididymis up and over the posterior and superior surfaces of the urinary bladder, down through the body wall, the abdominal wall right there, near to the inguinal canal, and not quite at the inguinal canal, but near the inguinal canal. And so if we're tracing the pathway, here's the ductus deferens over the top, around the posterior, and then here, yes, this is where we pass through, again, the body wall, first above the pubic bone, and then here at the inguinal canal. Sorry, I was confusing there, so let's just say that it does pass through the abdominal wall at the inguinal canal. And then it meets up with the ejaculatory duct. So this region here, this segment here is referred to as the ejaculatory duct. So it's where the seminal glands, and here's the seminal gland, dumps into the ductus deferens, and then that all passes through the prostate gland, and there it meets up with the urethra. So the urethra and the ejaculatory duct meet right here at the prostate gland, and then from there the sperm travel through the urethra and out through the tip of the penis during ejaculation. All right, so there we've got the pathway and all the areas or the tubes that the sperm pass through. And so just in case you were ever worried, there is no possibility of being able to urinate during ejaculation. So we actually shut down the muscles of the external urethral sphincter and the internal urethral sphincter as part of the processes of ejaculation, preventing any urine from leaving the urinary bladder. So the fluid that passes out during semen is going to be urine-free. All right, so now let's take a look at some of the accessory organs that are found along the pathway of the male reproductive tract. First are the seminal vesicles. The seminal vesicles produce approximately, and I should say first, before we talk about the seminal vesicles, it's the accessory organs that produce about 95% of semen. The remaining 5% are the sperm that are released as part of ejaculation. Okay, so the seminal vesicles, they are a convoluted sac-like gland. They're about 5 centimeters in length, and they produce the largest portion of semen. They make about 60% of the semen that's released during ejaculation. And the secretions include fructose, which acts as energy for the sperm. There are prostaglandins. We haven't talked about these yet, but these are chemicals that have a hormone-like effect, and so they will help to stimulate smooth muscle contractions both in the male reproductive tract and in the female reproductive tract to help to move the sperm along. The sperm have been hanging out for a long time, producing a lot of metabolic acids, and so the sperm are in a slightly acidic environment there in the epididymis, and so the seminal vesicles produce a secretion that is slightly alkaline and helps to regulate the pH of the semen. All right, why are we not moving forward? Come on, little computer. Oops. Okay, so there we are. Oops, I think I went too far. Let me check and see. Yep, we missed the prostate gland. There we are. Okay, so here's the prostate gland. Prostate gland is found at the base of the urinary bladder. It's approximately the size of a walnut, so that's always the comparison that we use. It produces 20 to 30% of semen that is produced during ejaculation. It's a thin, milky fluid, and that should not be alkaline pH. That should be has a slightly acidic pH. So we'll scratch that out, but it has a slightly acidic pH to it. It produces, or it has in it, enzymes that help to liquefy the semen, making it easier for the sperm to travel. It's got citrate, which is a nutrient for sperm in it, and there are also secretions here that are produced at the prostate gland that help the sperm to now finally be able to swim. So it's the secretions here of the prostate gland that produce swimmers out of the sperm rather than the non-functional swimming cells that they are as they leave the epididymides. The bulbourethral glands are the third of the accessory glands in the male reproductive tract, and they produce a lubricating mucus that helps to lubricate the penis, the tip of the penis, in preparation for intercourse. So semen, a single ejaculation produces somewhere between 2 and 5 milliliters of fluid. It has sperm cells in it, on average something like 120 million cells per milliliter. So if it's 5 milliliters, then that's 600 million sperm that are being produced. If it's only 2 milliliters, then we're looking at something like 240 million. If there is less than 48 million per milliliter, that's what we consider borderline infertile, which is amazing to think about, that many sperm, and we still are talking about fertility issues with a man. The fluids also include the fluids that are produced that we just talked about from the seminal gland, the prostate, and the bulbourethral glands. And as the sperm enter the female reproductive tract, so recall, if this is a sperm, here we have the head, the mid-piece, and the flagellum or tail. The head had that acrosome, that tip that had all of the crystallized enzymes in it. The membrane that is here at the tip of the acrosome, it will weaken in a process called capacitation. So capacitation will make the sperm able to digest its way through the jelly layers that surround the female oocyte. All right, so continuing then to talk about the external reproductive organs, we'll start with the scrotum. Scrotum is a sac of skin and muscle that encloses and protects the testes. The subcutaneous tissues of the scrotum contain smooth muscle fibers called the dartos muscle, and they, as they contract, they will pull the testes slightly closer to the body wall, helping to keep the testes warm. If the body becomes warm, then the dartos muscle fibers will relax, and the testes will hang further from the body so that they can cool off. And all of this regulation provided by the dartos muscles ensures that the temperature of the testes are about 3 degrees Celsius cooler than body temperature, which is important for sperm development. If sperm were to develop at body temperature, then they would be inviable sperm. The penis is built of erectile tissues, and it surrounds the distal portion of the urethra. So there are 3 parts to the penis. There's the body or shaft of the penis, which is tubular, and the erectile tissue of the body of the penis are the paired corpora cavernosa. So these are the corpora cavernosa here, and the single corpus spongiosum. So a single one of these would be a corpus cavernosum. That's one of these would be a corpus cavernosum, and the other, but when they're together, we talk about them as the corpora cavernosa. So erectile tissue is this maze of vascular tissue, of capillaries, in a mass of connective tissue, very elastic connective tissue, and smooth muscle. And so as blood flows into the penis, so if we open up the arteries that feed blood into the penis, then that maze of this vascular tissue just becomes, really, really firm and turgid with all of the extra blood that gets pushed in. And because of all of that turgidity, it squeezes shut the veins. And so erection occurs as we open up the arteries, and then because of all the blood in there, we squeeze shut the veins, and so the erectile tissue fills with blood. The glands of the penis, sometimes referred to as the glans penis, is the distal portion of the penis, sometimes talked about as the head, and it surrounds the urethral opening, and it also is erectile tissue. And then last of all, the foreskin, which is the common name for it, also called the prepuce. The prepuce is a fold of skin that hangs over or surrounds the glands and kind of protects the sensitive skin of the glans penis. But based on cultural or religious reasons or ideas about hygiene, frequently young babies are circumcised shortly after birth, where the prepuce is removed. So again, erection occurs with parasympathetic stimulation that relaxes the artery walls, allowing more blood to flow into the penis, and the veins are compressed, preventing much blood from leaving the penis, and that trapping the blood in there produces the erection. Orgasm then is the culmination of sexual stimulation. It comes with a lot of hormonal release in the brain, providing some psychological release and feelings of well-being and of connectedness to a partner. And it's also accompanied by emission, which is the production of all those secretions, having the secretions make it into the tubes, and then ejaculation, which occurs as peristaltic contractions of the urethra, of the ducts leading from the accessory glands and the epididymis, all push semen from the body. So the sequence then of emission and ejaculation. First, the bulbourethral gland produces a lubricating mucus, and so this will happen probably even before orgasm. The bulbourethral gland can produce its lubricating secretion. Then the prostate gland releases its secretions. The epididymis contracts, releasing or moving sperm into the urethra, and then the seminal vesicles produce their secretions. So that's the sequence in which all of this occurs. All right, I think that's everything. So one last thing to say, and that is that the refractory period is the time immediately following ejaculation, during which the arteries that supply the erectile tissues of the penis will constrict again, so we reduce the amount of blood flowing into the penis. The penis will soften and become flaccid, and during the refractory period then, it becomes very difficult to achieve another erection and to continue sexual intercourse. So the refractory period is that period of time following ejaculation when a man cannot achieve an erection again and continue with intercourse. Okay, so there we have it. Everything you ever wanted to know about the male reproductive system, but may have been afraid to ask. You aren't afraid. All right, so in the next one, we're going to take a look at the hormones that are associated with male reproduction, and then we'll be able to move on into female reproduction. You know what to do if you have any questions.